Hi, I'm Chris, 36, and a product designer from Melbourne, Australia. So my education, I studied at a public high school in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. I studied a range of my subjects, visual communication design, physics, maths methods, and they were some of my favourite subjects. Thinking back from that time, because that's when I did get into product design, or design in general, I love the variety that design could offer. And then finishing school and going through VCE at that time, I discovered industrial design at a Monash University Open Day. And from there I was hooked, knowing that that's what I'd be aiming for. And I was the first of any graduate from my public high school to apply and be successful, just to get into those courses. The careers advisor at the time said, oh, it's very difficult to get in. We've never had anybody get in, so don't get set on that sort of thing. But even back then, I knew that I was a decent student, and I applied for all the universities, all their industrial design degrees, and was accepted to them all. So I had the choice to go anywhere, which was at the time Monash, Swinburne or RMIT, and I chose RMIT because of their location in the city and the size of their course, which was the largest, offering the most variety. So straight from high school into a 4-year design degree. Yeah, spent time in the course still not really knowing what sort of area of design to get into. So I always had the interest in product side of things, so the industrial design, but for anyone from that expertise knows, industrial design covers a wide range of industries. So it's very difficult to know what sort of job you'd get straight out from that. So finishing my degree, 4-year degree after, primary school, high school, going all the way through without a break. By the 4th year of that degree, I was feeling pretty burnt out. So it was a bit of a stretch finishing it off. And I knew when I finished that I needed a break. So finished the degree, just hung in there to get through that 4th year. So I graduated with honours 2 or something like that, nothing special. My major project was okay, but I really just needed that break. So had that break in my 1st year, and another reason for that, why it wasn't so much of a bad thing, was because that graduation was at the end of 2007, where in 2008 there was the global financial crisis. From designers, that meant that a lot of companies who in the past may have had research and development teams or been growing their design teams internally, externally for that design work, a lot of those positions got cut, and it was very difficult for designers at the time, junior graduate designers, to find roles. So took a deep breath, had a few months off, had part-time jobs to fall back onto that were not design related before really getting back into it and finding a bit of a groove again. So I did have the opportunity to do some teaching, which I was recommended by one of the lecturers at RMIT, who put me forward for a sessional or casual position with Kangan Batman TAFE, teaching at some of the high schools out in the Sunbury area. It would have been a combination of design and technology for students that not necessarily pushing the boundaries with their learning. So there was some challenging classes and challenging students to work with. But that was an excellent program to begin with. So it was a really good introduction to teaching. On the back of that, almost the same week where I was recommended for that job, I was also asked by a friend of mine to be an assistant lecturer or assistant sessional teacher with him in a class called CAD to CAM at RMIT in the course that I just graduated from. All of a sudden I had 2 part-time roles, education and design, both of them well-paying but casual jobs. So it was a good introduction to education and that side of the design industry, because that is a big part of it as well, teaching new designers. So that was my first roles out of uni. The TAFE teaching course ended at the end of that year, and then I moved on to something else. But the sessional role that I did teaching CAD to CAM, I ended up doing that role for 10 years. The reason why I was invited to teach that and why I did enjoy doing that for such a long time is that CAD to CAM, which is computer-aided design, and CAM, computer-aided manufacturing, they were my real interest areas in design. So being able to take an idea that might be a sketch or something in somebody's head, converting it to something on a computer, which nowadays is 99% of the manufacturing and production, being able to then visualize it and then produce something from that. And I found that the whole process really enjoyable. I was never really that much into sketching, bit of a weakness of mine compared to my peers, but the computer side of things was a very strong aspect of my background. But there's more to it than that, and that's it was a really beneficial thing for me. It gave me a lot of joy and fulfillment. Again, if we're sort of looking holistically at my career to date and where I was trying to get to, it started as being an assistant to someone who had taught it for 1 or 2 years. From that second year onwards, when I took that over, I was then in charge of the content, setting the projects, setting the homework, and starting to respond to students and their problems. And this is not, as anyone that's been through a course or any sort of education would know, it's not all just about learning the subject, because young adults, new life out of high school, things happen. They've got to deal with work issues, family issues, where they're living. So there's a lot of stuff to manage there, and it's that side of teaching where you're actually building all those skills to learn how to manage people and talk to people, really made that, that education aspect of being a designer, really, probably now one of the fundamental building bricks for where I am now, being able to communicate with international suppliers. So in a bit more detail, like a lot of the work that we did, and there is a project here that we'll share some images of, which was the pulley project. They taught the students almost, not saying everything they need to know, but all the basics for how to create their own products in 3D. How you can do things efficiently, quickly, make changes, be able to share that as a really fundamental skill for a lot of designers these days. The software enabled those that weren't perhaps gifted with manual sketching skills or visualization skills in other areas to be a part of that industry and share their ideas. And that is what I really enjoyed. Those were 2 early roles that I had, but I did want to not just be a teacher. I did like the idea of continuing to educate students, develop my network through RMIT, but I did want to work as a product designer. So to get your foot in the door somewhere at a design consultancy or an in-house design team, and need to build up experience, because anyone that has been through a uni degree will know they'll have a folio of projects, but they're projects that are very hypothetical generally. Might be different these days than the 10 years since I've studied, but at that time, yeah, a lot of hypothetical projects, so you really need some real life experience to be able to get those roles. I had the same friend that I did some teaching with. He had his own freelance business, his own consultancy, and he needed some assistance there for some projects. Again, some 3D modeling experience. So he brought me on for a couple of projects. One of those projects was a volunteer project, which I spent some time in. So a lot of time spent volunteering in this, basically volunteering my hours, knowing that there's no real payoff, but the payoff did come from a networking event afterwards where we were celebrating the launch of the series and the events. At that launch, I got talking to a friend of a friend, much older, who had his own business again, and he was looking for someone to help with his graphic design work. So from that sort of, volunteering my time, then networking at this, I was able to find what was essentially my first design role, which was doing, let's say, the graphic design work for a signage company. So that first graphic design role was great. Tony Wing ID was his company. He had lots of great signage experience from a couple of the larger consultancies around Melbourne. So fantastic experience for me. I think it was about 9 months. It was just brilliant being able to then sort of get used to working a design job, even though it wasn't really what I wanted to do long term. I knew that the experience that I was gaining, in this case, I was gaining direct skills using some of the software that I was introduced to as a high schooler, but using it on professional grade. So things like Adobe Creative Suite, which at the time was pretty limited, using Illustrator and Photoshop, and a little bit of InDesign, and starting to learn about how to manage projects, manage schemes for layouts, doing a supermarket, all the signage for a supermarket, and we did 40 or 50 of them. So there's a lot to manage, but it was a great introduction to, okay, what real life designer does. Even though it wasn't product design, it was still very valuable. So after 9 months of working there, I was able to get a role at a company called Gush Creative, which was in the retail point of sale industry. Now, the point of sale industry is a very large employer for designers because there's a lot of retail in Australia. There's a lot of brands selling a lot of products, and those products need displays to sell their merchandise. So it's not a dream job, and it wasn't by any means, but again, it was another step in the direction of going from a graduate at uni to getting a role in product design. So those positions at Gush, where I worked for probably another 9 months, and then to Active Display, which was a larger company. Both of those positions, I was working in a team. I was usually working with a senior designer, learning from them the skills that would be later transferable to my own freelance work and to the product design work that I do now. In that time where I did graduate uni and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, I did start my own freelance business. And the reason I did that is because I had a few people asking me, "Oh, you're pretty good at CAD, could you help me with this project?" So I said yes. So I worked with, probably over the years, worked with 10 to 15 clients over that time since graduating. So that's 12 to 14 years now. And those projects have been really interesting because they've covered that wide range of industries that product design, industrial design covers. So I've done furniture design, lighting design, toys, packaging, some of my own point of sale retail inside that as well. Those clients are from different areas. Some of them, at least 1 or 2 projects, some were international projects as well. So they're not award-winning type projects, but they're real jobs. They're real products making real differences to people's lives. Again, that freelance opportunity was letting me get a taste of sort of managing my own business, my own hours, my own skills. But again, those, just having that work that were coming at different times, running parallel to what would be my full-time role, working as a retail designer, that would give me an outlet, which was, okay, this is the stuff I want to do. I want to do more industrial design and product design, stuff that is more substantial and longer lasting than what the retail design was. So I had the freelancing on the go, and I had my full-time role on the go at the same time as doing teaching for a number of years. So if we fast forward a few years, I eventually ended up at a company called Informed Design, where I was now the senior designer for a company doing retail point-of-sale merchandising, which meant I would do everything. So I would meet with clients, I would take briefs, I'd work through detailed design development, I would speak with suppliers. This role also introduced me to actually visiting the suppliers, which are some international companies. So a couple of trips to China to see some factories, which again, great experience for where I was heading. And 3.5 years with Informed Design really refined all of the skills that I've been building up over those years, because I had across these times been applying for jobs at design consultancies and not getting anywhere. But I knew over time, if I kept working on these skills and building up this folio, then eventually I would get that opportunity that I wanted to get into product design. I knew through the work that I was doing in retail that it wasn't something that I wanted to do full time for a long career, but did need to pay bills and work towards that goal of being a product designer. After 7 years in a retail point of sale design, various roles, teaching for a number of years, doing freelance projects for a number of years, I'd finally built a portfolio that would actually get me an interview for in-house design consultant or design consultancies. Now, eventually I found an advertisement for a product designer at Quest Payment Systems, a company I'd never heard of, but it sounded like a perfect role for me. Small design team, SolidWorks required, so doing a lot of 3D design, but working through the whole design and manufacturing process. So I went for an interview, got on straight away with the creative director, who's now my boss, and I've been there for 5 years since that. So obviously got the role, successful, and have absolutely loved the position there. What I've been able to learn, the skills I've been able to develop. I thought I was a SolidWorks expert going into this role. Learned quickly from the 2 other guys that I work with that there was still a lot to learn to how to use the software, combine it with the knowledge around things like injection molding, manufacturing details, tooling requirements, to really get the best out of those skills, combining them with that knowledge to create really world-class products. That time and the time that I've had the last 5 years, Quest Payment Systems, it's been fantastic for me. I was able to let go a lot of my freelance work, and after maybe 1 more year of teaching, I let go of that teaching as well, because this role now fulfilled a lot of the elements or a lot of the parts that were missing in my design work. And a big part of that was the fact that Quest as a payments provider, now this is both hardware and software, they also had a charity arm that worked with charities. This was a company which family grown in Melbourne, been around for 25 years, now 30, developing world-class products used internationally, with the charity products helping out those that are in need, helping people, small charities, increase their donation takings in a time when a lot of the world, and particularly Australia as a leader in this space, is moving away from using cash to using cashless cards and devices. So, advice for students, high school students, it's still very early in your life. You don't really know what's going to happen. It is great to have an idea of what you want to do, but if you don't know where it's going to turn out, that's totally fine. I think I was lucky because I did know that I wanted to be an industrial designer, so it made it easy to focus the subjects I was on. For those that don't know, I think keep your options open, but do what you're really interested in, because if you pursue your skills, what you really enjoy, there's probably going to be employment opportunities there if you're good enough. So if you put the effort in to learn those skills and keep pushing and start to grow your network and your experiences as you go through life, you'll learn where those skills can take you and where they might take you into education and employment later. For uni students, most uni students, you'd be in a course where you think probably that this is what you might be doing. And if we're focused on design here, there is a lot of variation in design courses, of course, where you've got your product industrial design, visual comm, graphics. Now there's a lot more user interface design as well. You could even start to go where we branch out into things like marketing, advertising, and lots of different aspects like animations and movies. Like, there's such a variety out there. You don't have to settle or know exactly what you want to do again during that course. My advice would be at that stage is to really sort of take your time looking back. Not a waste entirely, but I could have got more out of my degree if I wasn't so burnt out at the time. And I saw this a lot with my teaching through 10 years of teaching as well. If you're feeling that stress, or you're feeling like, you know, there's too much other stuff going on at the time, that's fine. The best thing you can probably do is talk to your teachers, communicate with them, or even the program directors, and see what options are available to you, because that short time that you do have learning, 3 or 4 years, it is a really short time, but you can get a lot from that time if you're dedicated to it. Try to dedicate yourself to learning as much as you can without being so caught up on what the end result's going to be. For design curriculum, I come from a point having been 10 plus years out of the system. In my time, I found there was not enough tied to real life. So real life design consultancies or in-house designers, where we're trying to build things or make things happen. I don't think I ever had a class that did budgeting for a project, or looked at, okay, you've developed this design, how are we going to cost it and how are we actually going to make it? How are we going to find these suppliers? How are we going to communicate with them what our design intent is? Where are we going to find the materials that we need to build this? That would be from a design, industrial design sector for the students coming out, wanting to go work various places. Having that sort of education and background to help you get started, and just to have an understanding that, okay, these things need to be priced. We need to, there are all these different components. We need to have a bill of materials that outlines what they all are, how much they cost, what sort of tooling's involved, what the time frames are. It's a really big aspect of product design, which just doesn't get touched on, or didn't get touched on at the time when I was a student. And if students got that today, I think that would really give them a better, realistic view of what being a real designer is like. Okay, so thank you for listening to my story. Hopefully, as a designer or educator, there were some beneficial parts to it. Please subscribe for more from 100 Designers Say.